Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. US Vice President J.D. Vance is set to make his first official visit to India next week. He will be meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. The External Affairs Minister believes that his visit will provide an opportunity for the two countries to review the progress in bilateral relations.
अमेरिका के उपराष्ट्रपति भारत आ रहे हैं, इसके बारे में हम लोगों ने आपको जानकारी दी। उनकी यात्रा 21 से 24 अप्रैल तक है। उस यात्रा के दरमियान उनकी मुलाकात भारत के प्रधानमंत्री से होगी। उस दौरान जो बातचीत होगी उसमें जितने मुद्दे हैं भारत और अमेरिका के बीच द्विपक्षीय मुद्दे हैं, उन पर बातचीत होगी।
Immigration and trade are expected to be among the top issues on the agenda. This is because several Indians have expressed concerns about being stopped at US airports and the mass deportations from the US as well. Indian students in the US have been facing sudden visa cancellations, and US immigration attorneys have been advising clients not to travel overseas. The energy partnership, the security cooperation, the Russia-Ukraine war, the Middle East tensions, all of that may figure in the agenda as well. As we speak, virtual discussions are underway between trade negotiators of India and the US for ironing out any kind of issues that are stopping a bilateral trade agreement. Now, that trade agreement may happen by fall this year. The terms of reference for a potential trade deal were finalized this week. India is aiming for a deal by October-September. And what is the American industry, the American government expecting from this bilateral trade agreement? And what is the larger message that J.D. Vance will bring to India? Joining us right now is Nisha Biswal, Senior Advisor at the Asia Group. Nisha Biswal, thank you very much for being with us. What is the message that J.D. Vance will be carrying to India? This is also a personal visit, but a very important time in ties between India and US as well.
Hi, Parikshit. It's wonderful to be with you. And listen, I think that the visit of the Vice President comes at a very important time. Clearly, there is a lot in the air with the trade and tariff issues that are roiling relationships around the world. But India is a priority, and the U.S.-India relationship has been one that the current administration has prioritized from its first week in office. And so I think the Vice President's visit comes at a critical moment to ensure that that the negotiations on the trade side continue to be ambitious and move at speed, as well as an opportunity to talk about the Indo-Pacific geopolitical priorities that both administrations share.
Right. Considering that reciprocal tariffs and reducing the trade deficit seems to be the #1 priority for US President Donald Trump, do you think reducing those non-tariff barriers, trade barriers, will be J.D. Vance's #1 priority during this visit as well?
I can't speak to what his #1 priority will be, but I can certainly say that this will be high on the agenda. And I know that the Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, has been engaging in discussions with his U.S. counterpart. And I know that both the U.S. and India believe that negotiating a bilateral agreement is in the best interest of both countries.
Right. Also speaking to you about the issues related to the trade deal, could you give us a sense of what is the expectation of the U.S. industry? Well, they want barriers to come down. They want more market access to the Indian market, non-tariff barriers to be brought down. But if there were certain areas where you feel immediate attention is needed, what would those be?
Well, certainly, I think that there will be conversations about the tariff rates, but the non-tariff barriers have certainly been a priority in the U.S.-India corridor and have been a sticking point for really accelerating U.S. investment into India. That will be everything from ensuring that there is predictability and rationalization on the tax schemes for U.S. investments coming in, looking at some of the barriers on component parts as more and more U.S. industry thinks about India as kind of a de-risking strategy. India needs to rationalize some of its policies with respect to how it deals with component parts that may be coming in, for example, from China. and the tariffs that might be against those. Some of the other regulatory areas, some of the technical barriers to trade and other areas where I think the negotiations have been ongoing, may be areas that can be dealt with relatively more quickly than areas that are going to take perhaps more protracted conversation.
All right. Nisha, my question would also be about immigration. There's a lot of concern about the clampdown on immigration, on visa denials for Indians. This is not just for Indians, but of course for students around the world. But there is greater scrutiny, greater questioning of Indian nationals, even green card holders, attorneys telling them not to leave the United States. Could there be any reprieve for India? Because I'm sure these concerns will come up during conversations between Prime Minister Modi and J.D. Vance, and also J.D. Vance and External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. Will the US make any change for India?
It remains to be seen. I certainly do agree that this should be an important topic of conversation between the two governments and during the vice president's visit. Indian foreign students represent a very important element of revenue for U.S. universities. Foreign students generally tend to bring in higher revenue, and most universities cannot right now be financially viable on just the U.S. domestic market alone. On the other hand, if there is and continues to be additional restrictions on foreign students studying in the United States, it may also create an opportunity as U.S. universities might be more interested in opening up campuses in India and expanding opportunities for Indian students to attain U.S. education in India itself. I hope that that is something that the Indian government is thinking about, how they can perhaps amend some of the legislation with respect to universities to encourage more university investment into India.
All right, Nisha, Biswal, thank you very much for joining us on the program with your views on the very important trip of J.D. Vance to India and the ongoing trade negotiations between India and the US as well. Time for a short break, but don't go anywhere. Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a key visit to multiple Southeast Asian countries this week. As the US-China tariff war continues, we break down how Xi's trip could reshape regional alliances.